The film begins by showing arid and barren earth, so food and drink are very hard to find. In a forest, someone is waiting for game animals to eat. The man appeared to have been prepared with an arrow. It will be released when the game animals enter the trap. Shortly after, a cat came, and the hunter immediately shot the arrow. Elsewhere, the earth has been corrupted and turned into an uninhabited place where many people choose to end their lives. However, in one place, a man named Eli was traveling to find a place in the west. On his journey, he often saw people robbing others for food. Eli tried not to get involved with the gang of thugs and chose to hide. He only wanted to be able to get to his destination safely. One day, Eli was obstructed by a group of people about to rob him. With his sword, he fought and killed them. Meanwhile, Eli's music player was out of battery. Upon arriving at a town, he charged it up by exchanging items he owned to pay for. Not only that, but he also changed his clothes to get a bottle of drink in a bar. Resting at the bar, a thug was angry at Eli for bothering his cat. He came and approached him. At first, Eli didn't want to deal with the thug, but he got emotional and smashed the thug's face on the table until it bled. He reminded him to take responsibility for robbing and killing travelers. Offended, the thug's men surrounded Eli, who looked very calm. After pulling out the sword, Eli took them out quickly. Suddenly, a barkeeper girl stopped him, and shortly after, a man named Ridridge came in and pointed a gun at him. Eli was then taken to a room to meet Carnegie, the ruthless ruler of the city. Carnegie liked to read books, so he asked the thugs to rob him and look for the book he wanted. He was interested in Eli's fighting skills and intelligence and asked him to be his member. He said if Eli joined, he would get various luxuries such as food, drink, shelter, and even women. However, Eli was not interested in any of that because he would continue his journey to the west. Even so, Eli accepted Carnegie's offer to spend the night at his house to avoid a commotion. Once Eli entered the room, Claudia, a woman serving Carnegie, came to bring food and drink to him. Although Claudia was blind, she could tell that Eli was intelligent and did not quickly follow other people's orders. After Claudia returned from Eli's room, Carnegie inquired about the information Claudia was getting. Hearing Claudia's answer, which seemed to disdain Carnegie, he was upset and asked Solara, Claudia's daughter, to serve Eli. When Solara entered, Eli knew her intentions and immediately asked her to leave the room. However, she begged him to keep staying in the room until morning. If Carnegie found out she was out of Eli's room that night, he would kill her. Finally, Eli allowed her to remain in the room. There, Eli tells her about prosperous human life 30 years ago, before the earth was destroyed as it is today. When Eli was telling the story, Solara accidentally saw a book with the sign of the cross. Eli realized that and immediately kept the book in his bag. Soon, Eli tried to break the ice by inviting her to dine together and pray before eating. The following day, Solara was practicing a prayer before breakfast with Claudia, who had been taught by Eli. Carnegie was shocked by what she did. He tortured Solara so she would tell him the prayer sentence she had said earlier. Finally, she told the story of an old book with a cross belonging to Eli. It was the book that Carnegie had been looking for. After leaving Carnegie's house, Eli visited a store to pick up a battery-charged music player and planned to continue his journey. However, Carnegie's men had been waiting for him in front of the store. Carnegie asked for the book kindly. He said he wanted the book to be widely distributed and restore everyone's faith in God. However, Eli refused because he had yet to find the best place to leave the book. Carnegie started to get upset and finally chose to take the book by force. He invited Eli to a duel using a gun. After getting a weapon, Eli immediately shot a sniper targeting him from the top of the building and took out most of Carnegie's men. Eli left the city to continue his journey after paralyzing Carnegie and his men. Unexpectedly, Solara followed Eli and asked him to let her come along. She convinced Eli that Claudia had given her permission. She wanted Solara to be free from Carnegie. However, Eli stood his ground and refused Solara to follow him even though she helped him find a spring around the city. He said the trip was perilous for her because many robbers and cannibals could attack them. Meanwhile, the wounded Carnegie was being treated at his house. He was one of the first to discover how the world suddenly went into chaos 30 years ago. Therefore, he intended to mobilize all his men to take the book from Eli. Carnegie planned to build a new city and control everyone with the book. Ridridge, who was always obedient to all Carnegie's orders, was finally given the instruction to get the book. He asked Solara in return for what he deserved. Solara, who was traveling alone, intended to go after Eli. One day, Solara was framed by two bad guys who tried to capture and harass her. When she was cornered and tried to escape, Eli heard Solara's screams and immediately killed the two men using arrows. Eli and Solara then rested in the ruins of a building because it was getting dark. Solara saw Eli reading the book and asked him about the contents of the book Carnegie wanted. Eli then recited some of the words in the book about God's guidance and protection. He explained that the book was the only one left. After the Great War, many people searched for and destroyed the book. It was thought to be the trigger of the war. After the war broke out in the last 30 years, surviving humans, including Eli, began to wander. One day, Eli heard a voice that led him to find the book. The voice also asked him to take the book to a place in the west. With confidence, Eli began to travel to the western region without a compass or map. He felt that he was always protected from all kinds of dangers on his journey. The following day, Eli and Solara continued their journey. They reached a desert and intended to rest in a house there. As Eli tried to open the door of the house, suddenly, he and Solara fell into a trap hole. Shortly after, an old married couple appeared and pointed a gun at them. After hearing Eli's explanation, the old couple, George and Martha, allowed Eli and Solara to enter and serve them food and drinks. Martha explained that George had set up all the traps in his house to defeat malicious people. As Eli and Solara looked back at the house filled with graves, Eli realized that the couple had killed and eaten their victims. Therefore, Eli and Solara tried to get out of the house. Eli was pointing his gun when George started arresting them. As Eli and Solara were about to leave, several cars of Carnegie's entourage suddenly found them. George, who saw a group of people headed to his house, finally helped Eli and gave him some weapons hidden under the couch. After reaching the front of the house, Carnegie threatened Eli, and shortly after, a bomb was thrown from the house, so the battle began. Carnegie fired a bullet that destroyed George and Martha's house and killed them. Eli and Solara surrendered and were forced to hand over his book with a cross-sign mark after Carnegie threatened to kill Solara. After getting the book, Carnegie shot Eli to prove that he was an ordinary human being who would eventually die. After that, he left with the book and Solara. Eli, who was hit by a shot, was left alone. In the car, Solara, tied up, suddenly strangled the driver using a rope to death, causing the car to have an accident that killed Reed Ridge. She picked up the grenade and tried to kill Carnegie by throwing it at the car. The car driver immediately dodged the grenade, and it blew up another car. Carnegie escaped the blast, and Solara took the time to quickly escape by stealing one of Carnegie's cars. Driving a car, Solara returned to George and Martha's ruined house. She did not find Eli there, so he continued to the west. On the way, she finally met Eli and asked him to get in the car. After some time traveling, finally Eli and Solara reached a coastal area. To get to Eli's Alcatraz Island destination, they had to cross by boat. Upon arrival on the island, some people were conducting very strict guarding. As it turns out, Alcatraz Island is a bookshop with valuable books to rebuild human civilization. However, the only book that wasn't there was Eli's cross-picture book. Eli and Solara also met a librarian and told him the purpose of their arrival to give the book. Unfortunately, Carnegie now took the book. Meanwhile, Carnegie returned to his house safely. He asked a mechanic to unlock the book because it was locked. After the book was successfully opened, Carnegie looked very surprised because he did not understand the book's contents written in Braille. Therefore, he asked the blind Claudia to read the book. Unfortunately, Claudia had not read for a long time and had forgotten how to read Braille. Carnegie was devastated because he had spent his fortune to get the book. Soon, his power in the city was also destroyed. In fact, the people revolted and looted all of his possessions. Carnegie, who no longer had any strength, seemed resigned to everything happening to him. On Alcatraz Island, Eli revealed that he had memorized well all the contents of the book. A few days later, Eli told the librarian all the contents of the book even though he looked weak. He did it while lying on a couch. The publisher noted the book's contents sheet by sheet. Soon, after telling the publisher everything in the book, Eli died. At the grave, Solara was saddened by Eli's death. All manuscripts that had been written by the publisher were immediately printed. Finally, the book was finished and placed on a shelf along with other scriptures. The last scene shows Solara at Eli's grave. She picks up Eli's sword. The librarian then came and asked her to settle on Alcatraz Island. However, Solara rejected it because she planned to travel to the eastern region to her hometown. On her journey, Solara brings Eli's sword with her. The moral of this film is that God's protection will come to those with good intentions for life.